Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Huckabee, and welcome to Conversations with Nicole. My guest today is the incredibly talented singer songwriter Bonnie Bishop of the Texas Hill Country. After experiencing her mesmerizing performance in Austin, Texas, I could not wait to share her brilliance with all of you. Bonnie spent her younger years in Starkville, Mississippi. Her stepfather is Jackie Sherrill, former football coach at Mississippi State. She shares several sideline stories with me, including one about former South Carolina Gamecock quarterback Steve Taneyhill. You'll enjoy it. Bonnie's successes include contributions to Bonnie Raitt's Grammy-winning album, Slipstream, and the television series Nashville. Her music is incredible. You'll find it all at bonniebishop.com, and be sure to follow her on Instagram at Bonnie Bishop for Rockstar. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Nicole. I am delighted to have as my guest today Bonnie Bishop, all the way from the Texas Hill Country. Bonnie, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Nicole. It's good to see you too.
Absolutely. We met when I was in Austin, Texas, attending an event, and you were just mesmerizing with your music. I absolutely fell in love with watching you sing and play the guitar. And I was like, have to get her on my show. So I tracked you down before you even left the stage, and you said, yes, I'll do it. So thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking me.
Well,
Happy to
my
be.
audience is going to love hearing about you today. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You have famous stepfather. You spent some time in Nashville, but you went back to your roots near Austin, Texas. Tell us more.
Well, I grew up between Texas and Mississippi. My mom married a very famous or infamous, depending who you are, football coach by the name of Jackie Sherrill, who I know some of your fans are going to know.
Yes.
And, he and my mom met after he left A&M, and then he was out of the game for 2 years, and then he was hired at Mississippi State. So we started our new family in 1991 at the same time he was starting the comeback of his career and of the Mississippi State Bulldogs. So I spent my most formative years in Starkville, Mississippi, and then I came back to Texas, went to college here in Austin, and kind of got my start on the Texas music scene. Learned to book myself, learned to promote myself, was an indie artist, and spent 8 years kind of slugging it out 150 dates a year on the road around Texas. And then I moved to Nashville, signed a writing deal in 2008. I grew a lot in Nashville. I won't say I had a great time, but living in an industry town, it's like the same thing for actors living in LA, or maybe people working on the stock market living in New York. You are immersed in your industry. So after about 9 years, I decided I wanted to come back to Texas. And so I've been in the Hill Country since the pandemic. So I came out to this little town. There's like less than 3,000 people here. And that's how I like to live my life when I'm not on the road.
Well, I love your story. So much more to get into. But for all of those football fans, since your dad was a coach for Mississippi State, and for our USC fans, that would be the University of South Carolina, because anyone can see this. I don't want them to get confused with out in California.
Yeah,
USC.
yeah.
But you have a great Steve Taneyhill story, you say. And when I met you that night, you said, when I come home on your show, I'll tell you this story. So I'm holding you to it, to tell the story.
Let me tell you. Okay, first of all, just a little backstory.
Okay.
When my mom and Jackie got married, we really didn't get along. Like, I did not want a stepdad. And so it took some time for us to get to know each other. And the way we got to be close was he invited me to come work for him on the sidelines when I was 13.
Ooh.
So there were no girls on the sidelines of SEC football in 1992. And Jackie, if you'll remember, before everything went wireless, the coaches were wearing, headsets on the field, but they had a 50-yard electrical cord that tethered them to the center of the field, right? So everybody had a cord carrier, and he basically asked me to be his. Well, he didn't ask me. He told me to show up on the sidelines, and I had no idea what I was going to be doing. But I was carrying Jackie's cord from about the age 13 until 18.
Okay.
So the Mississippi State Bulldogs were always the underdogs in those days, right? And so my dad kind of rallied his players like, all kinds of ways, as some of you will remember. But one of the ways was, go out there and fight like hell, like do what you got to do, poke them in the eye, like do whatever you got to do. So when the Gamecocks came to Mississippi State, I think this was probably my first or second year on the sidelines. I can't remember which, but the big thing at that time was that Steve Taneyhill had all that long flowing hair.
Right.
And he wasn't tucking it up in his helmet, which if you have long hair, you were supposed to tuck it up in your helmet, right? You weren't allowed to have your shirt untucked and all that stuff. So the SEC was kind of strict. Well, he had his hair hanging out of the back of his helmet. And so our players, that was their whole goal for that game, was to get a chunk of
Hair.
Taneyhill's hair. And so I'll never forget, we won, we lost to USC a lot. There was always a really good team, but this year we won. But my main thing I remember is one of our linemen, or one of our defensive linemen, running off the field with this chunk of hair clutched between his fists, and everybody was like, like, we got it. It was crazy. It was like they had just scalped him. Poor Steve. I don't know if he started, braiding his hair or putting it up in a little knot and tucking it up in his helmet, but yeah, that was like a huge deal. And my dad's players were pretty clean cut. You didn't get to have earrings and long hair on his. So yeah, that is my that's my I'll never forget that about Steve Taneyhill. Anytime his name comes up, I see one of our players
You see the wad of hair in your guys.
like the hair. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm so glad to know the story now because I've been in limbo wondering all along. Great stories. I'm sure you
wasn't more scandalous.
I think that's fair. That's
today.
all good, all good. But obviously, your stepfather played a role in your life. Eventually,
Huge.
you came to love him, and you were actually in the midst of telling your life story, which part of that I'm sure will be a major part of it.
Well, he's the main story. Yeah, Jackie, Jackie was one of those people that was vilified. People didn't know who he really was. And I didn't know who he was at first either, but I got to know him. And he's by far the biggest influence on me pursuing a dream because, in those days, nobody thought the Bulldogs were going to be able to win. And, he came in and won big right off the bat in those first 2 years. And it was all about changing people's mentalities, because, and this was a mentality in Mississippi that people felt like losers. It was a state that was very stuck in the past and very stuck in the sins of the past. And so I think that was the biggest thing he did for Mississippi State was changing people's mentalities. And he did it for his players and he did it for me. Just not just a never give up attitude, but believing in yourself, believing in the impossible and putting in the work to get there, putting in the work to reach your dreams and the value of being an underdog. That's something I learned more than anything. And when I got into the music business, I was an underdog because I was scared of the labels. I was scared of like the big business of music. So I was determined to do it on my own. And that, that's the Texas heritage of musicians is Willie Nelson, right? Like Willie left Nashville in the 1970s, early 70s after a 15-year record deal where they said, you're not a star. You're not a singer.
Right.
He wrote songs for other people. That was all good. But then basically he was retiring from music when he came back to Texas, which is where he's from. And when he came down here, all of his buddies were playing live music and he put together his first annual picnic, Willie Nelson's 4th of July picnic, and had all of his buddies on stage. And by his buddies, I mean like Stevie Ray Vaughan, who was just a young kid at that time, and Waylon Jennings and Chris Christopherson, and like people that were going to be legends. But Willie kind of organized that festival and brought a lot of attention to the music scene down here. And so the legacy that he built, I got to live in, 4 or 5 generations later, because the mentality down here was you go out and you do it for yourself. You book your own shows. You don't need a major label. It's all about building your fan base. And so that really parlayed with what Jackie had taught me. Like, you don't let anybody tell you who you are. Like, you know who you are. You can do anything you want. And you can achieve that. And it required a lot of hard work, of course. And being an underdog is not always fun. But to me, the wins were the best because they required so much more. Teams that win all the time and that have lots of resources and like big nice schools and big nice facilities and histories, and Mississippi State didn't have any of that, and so that was just ingrained in who I was. And so the book that I'm writing is a lot about, my childhood and those first 4 years in Starkville, the things I learned from Jackie, and then also examining, you know, his uh, his reputation and his history, because he had a very scandalous history as far as, his battles with the NCAA. He had more investigations by the NCAA than any college coach in history,
Oh,
and
wow.
never once found any major violations. So he sued the NCAA at the end of his career, which is that's a whole part of the story, right? And so he finally got his trial date, but it wasn't until 2019, 15 years after he filed his case,
Wow.
and he won. And he's, I think, maybe the second coach in history behind Jerry Tarkanian who ever won against the NCAA. Like no state behind him, no school behind him, just Jackie Sherrill versus the NCAA. And, it goes along with everything that I ever learned about him. Like, he knew who he was. He did not give up on clearing his name. And yeah, I have the utmost respect for him. And I look forward to the challenge of sharing that story with people, because, we learn this a lot in history. If we look back, like people who are vilified in the papers and in the news, lots of times are never who they've been made out to be. And so somebody has to tell those stories. And I got in way over my head. I had no idea how deep this. I was going to tell like this father-daughter story, and then I started interviewing a few of his coaches and players, and I ended up interviewing about 60 people in Jackie's career. And I've spent 6 years on this book. And I went back to school. I went to Sewanee University of the South to get my master's in creative writing, to learn, like, how do you write a book? Not that you need a degree to write a book, but I wanted, to study and other writing, and I wanted to workshop stuff and work with professors. So kind of coming to the end of that journey and the end of this draft of this book, which then I hopefully will find an editor and start to shop it around. So it's been an amazing journey.
It is amazing. As I hear you speaking about Jackie, you're basically telling who you are, though, as well, because you're moving forward, doing the hard things, doing it by yourself, determined not to get caught up in maybe the commercialism a lot of times of your industry. You move away from Nashville, back to your roots, back where music is just king in Austin, because of those that have gone before you as well. So your story and your stepdad's story are really the same, just a different industry, because you are so successful. You're a Grammy-winning artist. You've written songs for Bonnie Raitt. You have incredible music. Tell folks more about those accomplishments, and then when you release the book, you have to come back and talk more about that. But right now, back to the music for you.
Yeah, music, to be honest, when I first started in music, I wanted to be a star. That's just kind of the only way I thought. I didn't know people made a living just playing gigs. I thought you were on a bus and you had, millions of fans and you were on TV. I mean, I thought that was the dream. And, I spent the first 8 years of my career slogging it out down here in Texas, and kind of being taught by, the older generations about like, what music can do, what it can be, and what it can be for you, and what it can be for other people. And I think my dream started to change. I didn't want to reach that level of success. Like, initially, I wanted to be a star, but I also wanted to do it my way. I wanted to do it as an underdog, and it was like those kinds of things those values didn't really line up. And so I chose to just make music and make a living at it. And when I moved to Nashville uh, to write, that was part of the journey, I think, that really made me a great writer. I wrote with a lot of wonderful people, and because of some of those connections, Bonnie Raitt got a hold of a couple of my songs, and we became friends. And I've gotten to know her over the years, and had some songs in the show Nashville, if you remember that show.
Yes.
And all the while I'm, was putting out independent records, and kind of the biggest record I ever made as far as like the industry went was in 2016. I was 35, and I was really like, well, I'm never going to sign a record deal now. And then I got a record deal, which
Never
was
say never.
never say never. In Nashville, you're kind of like, as a woman, they would see you as like you've passed your time after the age of 27, right? It's like you're too old now. And so it's like, well, I got to Nashville when I was 29. So
Right.
anyway, so I put out a record in 2016 that was on a label, and a lot of people heard that record, and that kind of bumped things up for me. But then I was pretty much 6 months later, I was like right back to where I started. I was like, well, okay, well, that happened. And now,
Now
now.
what? Yeah.
So, I moved back to Texas. I made another record that I loved. And then the pandemic happened. And I think all artists at that moment, and other people, other industries, were like, well, I can't do what I love at all now. Right. So what am I going to do now? And I spent that time going back to school. And then I worked as a private chef. So I worked for a family in this area. I've always loved to cook, and I'd never made a living at it. I kind of part-time worked for a caterer on and off to make ends meet. But I worked as a private chef, and that was a really beautiful time because there were no gigs to be had. There was nothing to chase. And for me, that was really good. Because I think I was driven to the point of feeling like if I don't reach these goals, I can't like myself. If I don't reach some level of success, like, I'm not successful. And so that time like forced me to step back, and I realized I had neglected a lot of other areas of my life that were important to me mentally, like mental health.
Sure.
And so that then of course music came back around. We started, the world opened up and venues started coming back around. And for me personally, I got back into the music business because somebody that I greatly respected, an artist named Foy Vance from Ireland, reached out and said he wanted to write some songs with me and produce a record for me. We had written one song years earlier. And he said, I can't get that song out of my head. He goes, I really think that nobody has known how to record your voice. And I want to make this record with you. So in the process of writing and making that record, we fell in love. And so we've been in this like long distance relationship going back and forth across continents, because he lives in Scotland. He's from Ireland, but he lives in Scotland. But now we've made this new record. And so we're getting ready to release that into the world in the fall. And so this has been a really beautiful time. I hate for this chapter to end because I've loved, waking up in my little house, in my little world in Blanco, and writing all day and cooking and writing songs. And, now we'll have to go out on the road and promote all that stuff, right? I
Yeah.
have to release it. I'm going to have to hear what everybody thinks about it, right? I'm going to have to hear
It's
what
going to be great. Don't
I
listen
mean,
to those that don't like it.
well, I think
It's gonna be great.
writing my dad's book has really helped me get to a place where I'm like, yeah, I don't care what anybody thinks. I
'Cause
know
you
I'll survive. I know I can find ways to make a living no matter what happens. So I really enjoy what I do. I'm and loving this phase of my life. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to everything, and feel really proud of my dad, and getting to tell his story is a great honor. I think a few people have tried, but he is very hard to get to know. And it's hard to talk about because he's kind of like a walking dichotomy. He's like all these different things in one. And and he's also not great with words. So getting stories from him wasn't the only way. That's why I went out and did all those interviews or whatnot. So but yeah,
it's a lot to interview people
it's
and
a lot.
all that
Yeah,
content.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
So
talk about your songwriting, what inspires you, what fills your soul with joy, as you're in that creative process.
well, it's changed over the years. I think in the beginning, I didn't set out to write songs. A song just descended on me one day when I was a senior in college, living in this musical environment. Songs are in the ether all the time. Um, and so it's whoever grabs the paper and pen first and wrangles it down that gets the song. But the first time that happened to me, it was so exciting to have a connection with something other than, something otherworldly, is whether it's God or it's an arm of God, like this muse in the sky who, you know, taps people on the head with a special wand. I don't know. But it was so deeply spiritual even back then. Um, which I think my writing early on was more about relationships. And then something shifted in 2012. And I started writing more from a place of wanting to uplift people. Um, because music that actually Foy was a big part of this. He didn't even know me at that time, but like his music was so uplifting to me and so raw the way that he sang it that I was like, I want to make people feel like that. Like I want to soothe people in their darkest moments, and I want to make them get out of bed and dance when they feel depressed. Like I want to harness that power, that the gift that God has given me, and use that power to do good in the world. And so I think music is still that for me. It's more of a challenge when you approach it that way, right? But it's like, but you also don't want to force everything. Like sometimes you're just the conduit of the song. Sometimes it's a song that just needs to be born for somebody else. It needs to be a song that you get to deliver. There's a great honor and privilege, I think, in being touched with inspiration. It can be a burden too sometimes. I know
Sure.
some songwriters that never stop hearing songs, and it drives them absolutely crazy.
Well, they can't shut it down because
Can't
it's
shut it
always
down.
here. Yeah.
I think that's an argument for why is there so much addiction in our industry, because creative people are channels. And so you never know when the muse is going to inspire you, or everything you look at, it's like you're hearing things, you're seeing things, you're just open to you're
You
open
receive it. You
Yes,
receive
you're
it.
receive it, and so you hear more of it, you notice more of it, and some people go crazy with all that stuff coming in and out. And personally, I got sober about a year and a half ago. That was the right for me at the time, and I think it'll be right for me for the rest of my life, just based on how happy and healthy I feel now. But yeah, I think that songwriting for a long time was a way for me to process my own pain, and now it's a way for me to help the world. Or that's my intention, my hope for it.
I love that. When I listened to you on that stage that night, I mean, it was emotional. It
It was
really,
an emotional night too, wasn't
it
it?
was in so many ways, and we won't go into all that, but it was an emotional night. But your voice, the lyrics, the way you play the guitar, all of it just has this mesmerizing presence, and it's beautiful, and you truly are so talented. And I love that as a woman, and I mean, you're young, we're young, but still, society says, well, if you're not 25,
Right.
you're not important in certain industries. Trust me, I know. I was on
I'm sure.
television,
I'm
and
sure.
you know, shame on the world for thinking that way, because this is the time when you have so much more to bring to the table because of your experiences, all the things that you can share with your audience. I mean, your music is just, it's wonderful. And so you can't stop. You have to keep writing. You have
No,
to
I
keep doing it. You have to keep writing and singing.
don't think I'll stop now. It's interesting that you say that, because it's not the world it's not shame on the world. It's shame on the industry, because the industry is what controls who the world sees.
Rich.
And to say that a 25-year-old girl is the only valuable marketing asset, um, is neglecting generations of women who need representatives of where they've been, what they've been through divorce, raised kids, lost husbands, lost careers, are trying to figure out who they are. The majority of women still have families, and
Yes.
they're not able to pay attention to themselves until their families are out of the house. So they're in their 50s and 60s asking the question for the first time, like, who am I? And so to
100%.
Yeah, and I think that's why Tanya Tucker is getting to have a resurgence. Well, it's two reasons. One, Brandy Carlisle helped her. Brandy had success, and she reached out and helped Tanya and said, like, you've got something to say. Like, you're an incredible, Tanya Tucker was a huge star when I was, young. My
Yeah,
mom loved Tanya Tucker.
we
I
all did and do.
Yeah, and I think she also was somebody that was somewhat controversial, right? She didn't fit the mold.
Yeah.
Kind of a bad girl. She said the wrong things. She drank. She went out with lots of dudes. Like whatever she did, she didn't fit the mold at the time. So the industry kind of let her just kind of go away. Or maybe she did it to herself. Whatever. Point being, she would never. Nobody from the industry would have gone back and picked Tanya Tucker up and thought, you've got something to say, I'm going to help you. It took another female artist to do it for her. And so
when you were talking about that, she was exactly the person I was thinking of. And then you said it. I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly who I was thinking of.
yeah,
Deserved her due then and deserves it now. And just because you don't fit the mold doesn't make you valuable, doesn't make you less talented. In fact, sometimes I think you have more to bring to the table because of those experiences, because so many people are like her or like me who's been through divorce, married again, and struggles, or, like you've had some struggles and different,
I've been
we're
divorced.
relatable. We're real.
That's right. That's right. And it's just, uh, sometimes I think that everything got so much worse when everything became video centric. Like music wasn't video centric when I was young. Like MTV was just coming up, in like 1983, 1984. But like when I was starting in the music business, like 2001, the internet was just kind of becoming a thing, right? And I remember I remember somebody saying, like, you need to start videoing your shows. And I was like, why?
Why? I
Like,
sing.
because I know, I was like, wait, this is what I liked about music. Like, I don't have to be on camera. Like, I could just sing. It's radio, but it's not radio driven. It's image driven.
Yes.
And I think that is one of the things that is so depressing for me personally, and just and it's why they like to go with the younger generation, because their
Yeah.
skin looks great, right? Everything looks great, and it's like, even like when you called me, I was like, I need another 10 minutes. I gotta put some mascara on.
And what I say, you will look beautiful. You will be great. Because that's what other women should do for each other, no matter what season in life we are
I
in.
took care of my overalls for y'all,
I
so
love it. I love it. I noticed them. You look great. You know what? We could talk forever, because I just felt like you're just somebody I'd like to sit around and just, have a cup of coffee with and talk and just hear all of your stories.
we'll
Like I
do that
said,
next time when I come through South Carolina. How's that?
oh, and when I get back to Austin,
Okay.
I'm gonna find you. So
Yeah.
I know you just do special events now, performing. You'll get back on the road once this new album comes
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
In the meantime, how can people find you and follow you and hear your music? Because my audience needs to be listening to you, sister, because you was good. You was
Awesome.
good.
Thank you so much. Well, all the normal venues, you can look at, iTunes and Spotify and all that. My music's up there. I would really appreciate it if you would go to Instagram and follow me on Instagram. My name is Bonnie Bishop for Rockstar.
Yeah.
Bonnie Bishop was taken. So, I've been Bonnie Bishop for Rockstar for the last 15 years. Or however long Instagram's been around. But I'm right under 10,000 followers, and I'm trying to push over into the 5 digits. Apparently something happens when you have 5 digits, not 4 digits. So, please follow me on Instagram. Please follow me on Facebook. And I always post if I've got shows or whatnot. And I'm on bands in town. And my website is bonniebishop.com. And that's where you'll be able to get you can see like when I'm playing shows, it'll always be listed there, and get the information about the new record that's coming out in the fall. Not sure when, but we're talking about maybe doing a vinyl only release first.
Oh, okay.
So that you would only be able to get it at live shows. I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but it'll definitely be out to the public, within the next year. So, and all my old records are on all those other avenues. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, like I said before, you are just a jewel, a true treasure to watch in person and listen to you. And you're also really cool on the inside too. You are so soulful. I love that about you. I
Thank
love
you.
your story. Thank you for sharing it with me
Thank
today.
you
And
so
I
much.
am already following you on
I
Instagram.
know you are, girl.
So we need to get all of our numbers up so people can see all that you're doing
All right.
and following you. Thank you so much for your time
Thank you
today.
so much. Yeah, it was great to talk to you today. Have a great one.
You too. And that will do it for this edition of Conversations with Nicole. Until I see you again, I hope you have a great day.